I'm excited everyone's here tonight. This is probably our fourth or fifth live Zoom class for first-time home buyers. By far, one of my favorite things to do, not just to share with you guys a little bit about this process, help you feel more comfortable, but I really love engaging and answering questions. It's probably my favorite part. And so, for those of you that haven't found the chat box yet, definitely go find it. Give me a thumbs up. Let me know that you're here. Bonus, let me know what it is you're hoping to learn tonight. We have some good information that I'm going to be sharing with all of you. We had quite a few people sign up for this class January, right? Everybody's got goals on their brain. And so definitely let us know what it is that you're hoping to learn. We're going to have different little pauses throughout the presentation tonight, throughout the class, where you can drop your questions in the chat box and ask us whatever it is that you want to know. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. If everybody could just let me know if you're good, you can see the screen, all of that good stuff. That will be super helpful to me. And then we're gonna get right in because I respect y'all's time. So if I could just get here, come on back now. All right, everybody's good. Thanks for the thumbs up and the participation, guys. So avoid these seven costly mistakes. This is a first-time home buyer class. That's what we're going to be discussing tonight. So here's the deal. I want this class to be interactive. So I love feedback. Everybody's muted, so we'll primarily roll through the chat box. If you would like to ask a question out loud via the microphone, and that way, then you can raise your hand and I'll go and I'll unmute you so that you can ask your question. That's totally fine. Camera on or off, it's your choice. I love seeing everybody's faces, but that's your choice. Again, most of you have already done this, but find the chat box, say hi, raise your hand while you're at it, and let's stack up that box with some questions for our Q&A session. If we don't get any questions, I have some questions that I can run through that that a lot of people typically ask. But otherwise, how are you guys feeling tonight? Are you concerned? Are you stressed out? Don't be stressed out. Are you intimidated? Are you anxious? Are you uncertain? Are you excited? Right? These are like all of the emotions that people feel whenever they're going through this process, right? And it's kind of everybody feels different, right? Sometimes, and even in the midst of the process, um, even in the midst of the process, you may be excited and then feel anxious and then feel uncertain, whatever that case may be. So, uncertain, we got excited, definitely uncertain. Well, good. For all of you feeling that way, I really think the class is going to help you guys. The biggest thing that I want to communicate to everyone on the class, and maybe this is just the preacher in me, but you can do it. Like, you can do it. Even everybody's got a different starting point, but with the right information and the right team in place, you can get on the path to own your home, whether that's next week or next year, right? And so I believe that Christy says all of them. That's a lot. I believe that you can do it, and we will get you ready for that. So, um, I'm Channing. I've lost a lot of weight since I took this picture last year, but that's me and my beautiful family and my crazy dog. Anybody want a dog, by the way? Because he is for you. You could have him. The dude likes to eat in the trash and bothers me a little bit. But no, we rescued that dog about 5 years ago. But that's my two boys, Colton and Judah, and my wife Monica. And I just put that up there so you can see I'm a real person just like you. Right? That's our fancy "we took pictures, look at us" thing that we did last Christmas at the Christmas tree farm. But that's who I am. Our goal tonight is that I want you to feel prepared and at ease about buying a house. That is my goal for you tonight. So the information that we're going to cover, we couldn't possibly cover everything that there is to know about buying a house in an hour, but we can make you feel ready and prepared and then give you some next steps on what it is that you can do to get this ball rolling. And so I love helping home buyers. Okay. So we work all across the state of Louisiana. Last year we were in Florida. We didn't renew in Florida. We are local to Louisiana. I live in Lake Charles. And then we've got some other offices getting ready to be opened up. So really exciting stuff for 2025. But we work all over the state. And so that's what we love to do. I remember helping Tanya 2 years ago. One of my favorite stories, she came to one of these classes, Back then, I didn't do them on Zoom. We did them on YouTube. She watched 2 hours of me talking about buying houses. And after 27 years, this is one of the reviews that she left us. They were able to purchase a home. We got them in a beautiful home somewhere around Hammond in one of the suburbs there. I went to the closing because it was so special. So, but that's what we do. We like helping home buyers. So ask away, right? Here's what we're going to cover tonight. Here's a big question. Maybe you haven't asked yourself this, but you definitely should. Should you even buy a house? Is it the right time to buy a house, right? That's the first thing we're going to jump into. Then we're going to talk about the 7 mistakes. As we go through the 7 mistakes, you're going to see a lot of the questions that you have probably get answered as we cover those different topics. And then I also want to cover loan programs. And if we have time, we'll jump into down payment assistance. But definitely just want to give you a quick overview of the loan programs. That stuff gets more clear as you jump into the process because you either qualify for that program or you don't. But I just want to give you general guidelines for those, and then we can follow up with more detailed questions and give you better answers and more specific answers to your situation during Q&A. That's one of the things as I try to get through the material as quick as possible while being thorough so that we can have as much time as possible together for the Q&A. I get up at 5 a.m., so your boy doesn't like to stay up too late, but we will rock this thing out and answer some questions tonight. So, why should you buy a house? Now, some of you don't need me to answer this question, right? Because you already have something that's driving you wanting to purchase a home in the first place. It might be that your landlord's getting on your nerves, or you're tired of living with family, or you feel like you're wasting your money, right? Like a lot of you feel that way. You can't do any other renovations, all of that stuff. Someone did ask in the chat, do we do DSCR loans? We do. We will obviously not cover those tonight because that's an investment product, but we do offer DSCR loans. Tori usually heads those up on my team. So to build wealth is the very first reason. Now here's the interesting statistic. The average renter versus the average homeowner. The average homeowner has a net worth of $250,000 more than a renter. So building wealth through home ownership is possible. I know that there are people that say, well, buying a home is not an investment, it's a liability, yada, yada, yada. But the data speaks for itself. That difference is usually the equity that someone has in their home. And so if you don't do any other investment strategy, you should, but even if you don't, buying a home is the path to build wealth. And I think it's kind of like breaking that first wall down, right? And then it's like once you own a home, it kind of paves the way for more financially wise decisions, opening up thoughts about investing, right? There's just a lot of things that go into it, but building wealth is a key, and it isn't like that immediate need that most people feel, right away. Like I need to build wealth when I buy a home, but it is something to think about long term. The next is fixed cost. Now, a lot of people talk about, right, interest rates. We're going to talk a little bit about that. That's a big subject. And that being a reason why maybe someone shouldn't buy a home right now. But here's the interesting fact, and you guys probably know this as well. If you're a renter, your rent does go up. When you renew that lease, when things change in the market, the price of rent goes up. I think about when Louisiana experienced, for us, Hurricane Laura way back, Hurricane Rita. On the other side of the state, you had Ida, and then way back Katrina. Like when those things happened, it really dramatically shifted, at least for us, our rental market, and prices skyrocketed. So when you buy a house, those costs become fixed. Your mortgage payment stays the same because your interest rate is fixed. Now, yes, taxes and things like that can be affected on an annual basis, but overall, your payment stays fairly fixed. Number 3, right? A place to call your own, a place to build a legacy, a place to raise a family, whatever it is. Buying a house gives you that place to call your own. And hey, if you're not going anywhere, if you're planting roots, if you're ready to stay in the same spot, then what better way to do that than having a place to call your own? I think it's a beautiful thing. So that's some of the 3 top reasons why you should buy a house. Why should you buy a house now? Now that's an interesting question because I would bet that most of you have turned on the news in the last year and you've probably heard the opposite, right? Fear, 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 be afraid, rates, don't do it. You're an idiot if you buy a house. But here's the deal. And I'll just set some people free with this statement. Buying a house, whether or not you should or shouldn't really comes down to one thing and one thing only. Can you afford it? Is it in your budget? Can you afford to make the monthly payment? Can you afford to do what is required to own a home? And if you can, then the future is on your side. So take out of consideration for a moment interest rates and the market and everything that people are saying. If it's within your budget, you're already spending the money anyways. That's really the only question that you have to ask yourself. Now, of course, go find the best deal, go find the best house. But in terms of whether you should or shouldn't, it really comes down to can you afford this or not? But here's why, in my opinion, now is still a good time to buy a home if you can afford it. Number one, competition is low, right? Obviously, the news works. And so it has scared a lot of buyers out of the market. But that is a good thing for those that are serious about buying a house. I will take you back to the year 2020, right? The C word. We all kind of lived through this crazy viral thing and the whole world kind of changed, right? During that time, interest rates hit the lowest that they had ever been that I know of. And what happened is if you were a first time home buyer, like you guys are, our clients were having to make offers on dozens of houses just to find one that would get accepted because there was so much competition, which means it was harder for them to get closing costs. It was they had to shop longer. There's an emotional toll that happens when you keep putting in offers and they keep getting rejected, right? Right now, we have record low competition. This means that sellers are more negotiable. So most of the first-time home buyer programs that we have access to, that you have access to as a first-time home buyer, will allow the seller to pay your closing cost. When the market's hot, they're less willing to do that. And you're talking about an out-of-pocket expense of anywhere, especially in South Louisiana, of $6,000 to $20,000, depending on your price point. And so you can actually have the seller cover that with FHA, with USDA. They can cover that, and they are covering that by and large in this time frame right now. Number three, like we talked about before, you get to start building wealth now. You get to start building that equity right now. And then number four, home prices increase as rates drop. That's what I was just illustrating, right? That as interest rates come down, the price of homes shoots up because what happens is more buyers come into the market, right? And there isn't a massive inventory of homes to sell, and so it drives prices upward, making it less affordable for you to purchase. And the lower they get, the worse that is. Now, the flip side to that, and this kind of goes into what about these high interest rates? Here's the deal. If you buy a house right now, keyword, as long as you can afford it, even with the rates up compared to what they were, and we don't know where they're going to go back, we don't know where they're going to settle. You get to lock in the price of the home now, and as long as you continue to make your payments on time and protect your credit and you still qualify, even sometimes we don't have to pull credit, you have an option to refinance and get whatever the lower rate is that happens. Now, it's not free to do that, and you don't want to do that every 6 months or a year, even though some people say it's free. It's not. They just roll everything into the loan, and they call it quote unquote free. But even if they go down, once you own the home, you have the option to do that as long as you still qualify. And so you get to lock in the price of the house now. The average appreciation of a home, right? With the price increases are anywhere from like 8 to 15%. And of course, that depends on your market year over year over year over year. So rates are up. They are not historically high. Historically, rates have hovered between 8, 9, 10%. The difference is obviously homes cost a lot more than they did the last time rates were in this place. So that is my best example and advice to you on whether or not you should buy a home. I really believe it comes down to affordability. Well, we already covered that. What's going on here? Oh, I'm hitting the wrong button. There we go. All right. So if you have any questions about that, this is not a Q&A stop, but I'll just tell you while you're thinking of it, go ahead and drop it in the chat box. So when I go back and start answering questions, I can tackle it. But let's talk about the loan programs real quick. And again, remember I said I just kind of want to give you a general basis of the 4 major loan programs and what each of their requirements are so that you have a general idea of what's available to you. So you have basically 4 different types of loans. You have a conventional loan, an FHA loan, a VA loan, and a USDA loan. Now, conventional is going to be the more difficult loan to qualify for, right? This is typically going to require you to have higher credit. Even though their minimum credit score requirement is a 620, if you have a lower credit score, you're going to need a fairly large down payment to qualify for a conventional loan. However, if you have a higher credit score, you can 680, 700, 720. You're a first time home buyer, you're going to qualify for 3% down or 5% down. Um, they don't require 20% down. That is a myth that we'll talk about later. But for first time home buyers, unless you are like high credit score and then low to moderate income, conventional loans are not typically the loan program you're going to rock with. You're going to be looking more along the lines of one of the government loan programs. Again, unless you have that higher credit score, a little bit of a larger down payment, or maybe you qualify for one of the grants or something like that, then you may. Most of our clients are going to go FHA or USDA, and if you're a veteran, that's a loan for veterans, the VA loan. But FHA is very flexible. So FHA has a 3.5% down payment requirement, and you can get approved with an FHA loan with a score as low as 580 for the 3.5%. If you have a score under 580, right, then you're going to have to put 10% down in order to qualify. The VA loan doesn't have a down payment, right? It doesn't have any mortgage insurance, and we can help veterans with credit scores as low as 500. They actually don't have a credit score. It's just that requirement. It's just that some lenders impose that on different buyers. Those are called overlays. And then USDA, one of the loans that we're known for, one of my personal favorite loans to do, there's no down payment. So if you're in Louisiana, which most of you should be, pretty much every area of Louisiana has places that are going to qualify for the USDA loan and the zero down payment product. Now you're not going to be able to buy like in the city of Baton Rouge or New Orleans or Shreveport or Bossier or Lake Charles or whatever, but you can buy on the outskirts. You can buy in the suburb areas. And so it's a fantastic loan program. Like, just for instance, the entire North Shore of New Orleans qualifies for USDA, all of Baton Rouge's suburbs, all of Lake Charles' suburbs, so Lafayette's, so on and so forth. So it's a great loan program because it is zero down. My chart here does say that you can have a 580 credit score and still qualify, and that is true, but there are additional hoops that you'd have to jump through. For USDA, the optimum credit score for that zero down program is going to be a 640. Again, there are ways to get around that, but you're going to really want to aim for that 640 to give yourself the best chance. Now, those are the four major ones. Each of them can do 15 to 30-year terms. We find that most home buyers in general, not just first-time home buyers, are doing 30 years, right? Even if you move in 5 years, people that's what they're doing. And so hopefully what this chart shows you is that there are options out there. None of them require you to have perfect credit. None of them require you to have 20% down, right? You have flexible options available, whether you go zero down or whether you go like FHA and put a little something down, right? Like a lot of people, income taxes around the corner. Maybe you just got a bonus for the end of the year at work, whatever it is. There are ways to put that money to use to actually secure your future. And so those are conversations that we love to have with folks. So that's the loan programs. Let's jump in and talk about mistake number one. While I take a little breath here, for USDA, it says for mortgage insurance says none. Can you explain that? Yeah, so they don't call it mortgage insurance. They call it something else. It actually probably shouldn't have said that. But I will tell you, B, that it is the cheapest of all of the programs. The not PMI that's on the USDA loan is significantly cheaper than all of them, and it's like 30-50 bucks a month for most people. So it's very, very inexpensive. So that is that. Let me take a sip of water. If anybody else has any questions, drop one. Mistake number one is going to be shopping before you get pre-approved. Now, here's the deal, because you guys have probably heard all this. You got to get pre-approved in order to buy a home. You've got to, do all this stuff. The thing is that we're not just saying that because we want to like take your money and get all your information and all that stuff. Somebody is, I don't know how to turn that off. Somebody's drawing on the screen, but that's cool. It's probably somebody's kid. So, give us your best picture. Not getting pre-approved is a big deal. Shopping before getting pre-approved is a big deal, and here's why. You'll know that you can. That's the biggest thing, right? So many of you, when I opened this up tonight, when I asked how you were feeling, uncertain was like the biggest response. When you get pre-approved, you know what you can and what you can't do. That's the biggest thing. Not only that, you know what you can afford. The pre approval, if done correctly, and not everyone does them correctly, but if they're done correctly, they give you a map of what program you qualify for, how much it's going to cost you every month, how much it's going to cost you out of pocket, and yes or no, are you ready or not? Right? It helps you focus on the right market, especially the right home price. That's the biggest one. You don't want to be looking at $400,000 homes on a $200,000 budget. You're going to hate the $200,000 homes if you start looking at $400,000 homes, right? That's just the way it works. It's like if you hop in a brand new car because you took your car to the dealership to get it worked on. They do that on purpose, right? Now you get your car back and you're like, oh, you forget about how that payment felt. But that's the deal with that. Shopping with confidence, and most importantly, understanding all of the costs that are involved. All of the costs that are involved. Let me go back to that. So the whole deal with the pre-approval. Now, I understand, and part of the reason I'll share just a little bit of my heart with y'all tonight, why I went into business for myself, why I stopped working for other lenders, is because I didn't like the culture of mortgage lenders and a lot of loan officers, where it was like, hey, do this application before I even have a conversation with you, and I'm only going to call you back if it looks like you're going to qualify. Not only is it illegal if it ever gets reported, but it's not a great way to help people. And so that's not what we're about, but we do understand that you can't get you're not going to know for sure what your options are. We can give roundabout, and that's kind of what our call is about. We can give all of those things, but until we put pen to pad and get everything out there, we can't give you a for sure answer. And that's what we want to be able to do. We want to be able to say yes or no, and you have confidence that when you make that offer on a house, you're good to go. Which is why we collect documents and do all the things that we do. So, if that was good information, give me a thumbs up in the chat. We're going to move on to mistake number 2, working with the wrong team. Now, I want you to think about this before I even move to the next slide. Thank you guys for the thumbs up. I appreciate the engagement. I want you to think about this. When you buy a house, there are at times 5, 6, 7, 8 different parties that are involved in this one transaction. Just this one transaction. And if somebody that's involved doesn't pull their weight, everything starts to get a little funky. Things start to go a little sideways. In fact, case in point, just the other day, and I'll move ahead to the team. Shameless self promotion there, by the way. But I moved there we were doing a loan for a friend, and they picked an insurance agent that we don't normally work with, and that was fine by me. But it took them 2 days to get us a document that the people that we regularly work with would do in minutes, an hour, a couple hours maybe, right? And it actually pushed back. We weren't late, but it pushed back when they could close by almost a day. And so that's just an example of why having a good team is important. Typically, you're going to have at least 4 people on your team, actually 5. I just couldn't fit 5 on here. You're going to need a mortgage broker or a loan officer. That's me saying pick me. Like I said, shameless self-promotion. The job of the loan officer is to get you the money to buy the house. So if you've got cash, this is probably this presentation tonight, if you're paying cash, might not be the best use of your time. Although I would say spending cash on a house and not financing it might not be the best use either. The next is going to be the realtor. Now, here's what typically happens, and you guys can let me know in the chat if this is real. Most people talk to a realtor first before they talk to a lender. And so they get excited, they start looking at houses, but then there's this question that comes from the realtor. Have you been pre-approved, right? You need a winning team. You do. But if you need money to buy the house and you don't have it in cash, you've got to get that lending team squared away. And then you've got to get an agent squared away. And it's really important to me that you know that you probably don't want to use the listing agent of whatever house you're buying. See, here's the thing. That's called dual agency. And they have to try their best to represent each of you equally. But the listing is a for sure sale for them. And so we just see this all the time where they're going to negotiate harder for that seller than they are for you. You want someone that works for you and only you. You don't want to work with somebody that's got their interests divided. It's another reason why if you decide to go buy a new build, you go to DSLD or DR Horton or whoever, that you work with an agent alongside of the builder's rep, because the builder's rep is not your advocate. They're for themselves. They're for the builder. So just FYI on that. You're going to have a home inspector. So it's not required to use a home inspector when purchasing a house. Like, the lender is not going to require it, but it is wise, right? You're talking 3, 4, $500 up front. They're going to tell you everything that's wrong with that house, and it's going to give you additional negotiating power. You're going to be able to use that, say like, hey, this is broken, you need to fix it, or hey, I don't want you to fix it, but I want you to knock a little bit off the price, right? These types of things help you understand what's going on with the home and make sure that you're making a wise choice, but they also can give you negotiating power as well. Now, one thing that I'll note on the home inspector, and this is something that we kind of coach you on when you're working with us, is their job is to find every possible thing that's wrong with the house. You have to decide what you can live with and what you can't. They're going to find it. That's their job. But just because they find stuff doesn't necessarily mean it's not the right house for you, because no matter what house you look at, even the brand new ones, in fact, especially the brand new ones, they're going to find things that are wrong with that house that need to be fixed. You're going to have an insurance agent. Now, I know that most of you know the importance of that, just given everything that's happened since, the last 4 or 5 years with the storms, right? You need an agent that's on your side. You need an agent that you can count on and that you can trust. And then you need to find somebody that actually has good premium, right? So that's one of the services that we offer, is we help you at least get a couple of quotes initially. And then, hey, if you've got an agent you like, you can shop with them. The last person on the team, and we'll typically help you pick this unless you already have a relationship, is the title company. I didn't have room to fit them on here, but they're important, right? They're going to, and they make or break the transaction. If you pick a bad one and they're slow, then it just makes everything worse. But they're going to make sure that the person that's selling the home can sell it. They're going to make sure that there's no liens against it. And they're going to search for family members that may have ownership for that home that nobody caught. Then they're going to give you insurance if you select to purchase it, which it's assumed you will. That if something ever happens in the future regarding that, they're going to pay for the legal fees and whatever it takes to make that matter correct. So you need that winning team. And then also, oftentimes when you pick a mortgage person or a realtor, they're going to kind of have their team assembled, and we'll work with anyone, but they're going to kind of have their go-to people assembled to help you move along in that process. So let's go ahead and do a mini Q&A session right here, right now. Let me know what questions do you have so far. I love the engagement. I'm loving it. So do we have to have the pet inspection, home inspection, appraisal all up front? So here's how this works. You don't have to pay it at the time you do the application. You do start paying those things whenever you go under contract. So the first thing that happens, you get a contract, you're going to have the home inspection. So that's a 10-day period. You have to hire the home inspector, get them out there to do the report. Once they give you the go ahead, then you're going to pay for the appraisal. That's about $500 to $600, depending on the area. After that, you should have no more out-of-pocket expenses. Once you've done your application and paid for your credit report, once you've done the home inspection, and once you've done the appraisal, all of those out-of-pocket expenses are done. And both the credit report and the appraisal actually are credited back to your closing cost. However, the home inspection, because it's not required, is not. So that's a great, great question. What is the best way to build credit to get ready to buy a house? So Daniel, let me ask you a follow-up question. Hopefully you're here. It really depends on your situation. There's a different approach whether if you have no credit and if you have bad credit. If you have no credit, then you need to establish some credit. Get some secured credit cards, some secured loans. Don't max them out. Pay on them, and in 3 to 6 months, you'll usually have a score that you can use to buy a house. If you have bad credit, well, then that's a whole other conversation of like what needs to happen. And that's something that we do on a one-on-one basis when we do the pre-approval call and walk you through what you need to do. But it kind of, I'll say this, and I'm sure it'll come up again, and I'll say it again. Credit repair is mostly a waste of money. So like don't pay a credit repair agency $300, $400, $500 a month. All they're doing is sending disputes to get things removed off your credit report, but they often pop back up as soon as you apply for a mortgage or you try to get a car or something like that. What is a better use of your time is to pay down credit cards if they're close to being maxed out, catch up any late payments that are currently late, and leave all your collections alone unless you're instructed otherwise. Don't pay collections because they're not going to help you, and in fact, most of the time they'll hurt you. That's just some kind of like 3 minute advice. We can hop on a call and get more specific if that's helpful. What are some important things to do to help before purchasing a home if credit is an issue? Elizabeth, I think I just answered that. If you want to ask a clarifying question, let me know. Felicia says, I learned that the hard way. Yes, a lot of our clients have. If I'm looking at a home for 225 and my credit is 725, how much down payment would I have to put down? And will my mortgage be over 1700? So you don't have to put anything down with a 725. You would most likely qualify for one of the zero down programs. To know what your mortgage would be, though, what we need more information. So I would suggest I'm going to post a link up here in a second on how to book a call with me. I would suggest doing that because location is going to be really key on how much it's going to cost you. You summed it up. Hi, everyone. Question: how long before you can purchase a home after Chapter 7? Quincy, great question. It's going to be 2 years. Sorry, I don't want to get this wrong. I think it's going to be 4 years. Let me just double check that. I should know this, but I haven't got one in a while. Yep, 2 years from the discharge date for an FHA loan, 4 years from the discharge date for a conventional loan, and I think it's 3 years from the discharge date for a USDA loan. Chapter 13 is different. You can actually get a mortgage while in Chapter 13 if your trustee signs off on it. But a Chapter 7, minimum 2 year waiting period. Can student loans affect your chances of getting approved? Absolutely. Even if they're deferred, we have to count them into your debt to income ratio, which is usually 0.5% or half of 1%. We add that as a monthly payment. And then as long as you can swing that in your debt to income, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, you'll be good to go. Let's see. What are the pros and cons of refinancing? There's two reasons someone typically is going to refinance. Either they need money and they don't have it, and so you're willing to pay a monthly payment, maybe even higher than what you're paying to get that cash. Sometimes you can use that cash to pay off other debts to offset the increase in payment, or you want a lower payment. And those are the only two times most people are going to refinance. Someone will probably throw a third scenario at me that I didn't think about, but those are the two most common. It really comes down to that. A good refinance, and that's obviously not what we're talking about tonight. So I'm going to wrap it up after this. But a good refinance person presentation will show you the pros and cons of your individual situation. Flood risk is geographically everywhere. Should I let that discourage me from buying? I don't think so. If your house, I think everybody in Louisiana should own a flood policy on their house, even if it's flood zone X. That doesn't mean it's not a flood zone. It just means it's not likely to flood in the next 100 years, which pretty much every flood that's happened has happened to homes in flood zone X. The policies are very cheap if it's in flood zone X, and even if they're in AE, they're still relatively cheap. So I would not. I would obviously try to buy a home that's in flood zone X. I wouldn't go out of my way to buy one in AE. But either way, whether you buy one in AE or X, I would have a flood policy. Okay, these two questions, and then we're going to move on. Question: does your company help with family inherited land that I would like to build on? Right now, Tramika, I don't have a great construction lender. We have one lender that offers it, but we're not super confident in their performance and their service. And so we have not rolled it out because we don't want to leave a bad taste in anyone's mouth. So I don't have the ability to do that now outside of like moving a single wide or a double wide or something like that on the land. Is it best to pay off debt after a divorce, or can someone buy a home with debt depending on how much debt? Yeah, once something goes to collections, I would not touch it unless you're specifically instructed to. It's not helpful. And now you may have to for debt to income reasons or something like that, but paying it off it's still on your report. So I would only pay it if you're instructed to. Now, if you have things that are open still, credit cards, but they are not past due, or they are past due, but they're not in collections, then yeah, you want to catch those up. That's awesome, Quincy. So you're right there. I actually have, if you go to the Bayou Mortgage YouTube channel, Quincy, I have a whole video on how to buy a house after you filed bankruptcy. I think that would be super helpful for you. I'm a disabled veteran trying to buy a foreclosure without putting any money down with the 629 credit score. I bet we can help you as long as as long as your income is where it needs to be. Sorry, it just says iPhone 3, so I don't know your name, but iPhone 3. I'd love to connect with you. I love helping veterans, so let me know. VA has no down payment requirements. They also are very, very flexible on credit. So let me know. All right, let's jump into the next. Appreciate all that engagement and questions. Mistake number 3, not understanding closing costs. See if I can clear some of this. No, I don't know how to do it, guys, but that's a first for me. Oh, there we go. I figured it out. Okay, not understanding closing costs. That's another big one, and lenders like to play games with this. So you need to be on the lookout for transparency when it comes to, okay, I've gotten pre-approved. I'm talking to this lender about the number, right? But they keep changing. That happens sometimes, especially in the pre-approval stage. But here's the thing. What are closing costs when you're buying a home? What are the costs of buying a home? You're going to have your down payment unless you're doing zero down. You're going to have closing costs and you're going to have prepaid items. Now, when we say closing cost, we mean everything, but some people get away with disclosing lower closing costs because they call some of the fees closing cost and the other half of the fees prepaid items. Here's the difference. They'll call the closing costs the title company fees, the taxes, all of those prepaid charges. But then the prepaid items, those are going to be your annual insurance premiums and your annual property taxes that get rolled into the loan. And they're pretty significant because, insurance is fairly high in Louisiana just due to the storms. So, here's the document that you should get. So if you're not watching on the screen, I'd recommend, if you can, if you're not driving and it won't cause you any harm, to check out the screen right now. This is what's called a loan estimate. I'm not going to take the time to go through everything, but you need to get one of these documents when you're applying for a mortgage. Now, you're not going to get it until you find a house, typically, right? Until you're getting ready to make an offer on a house, you won't get this document, but you need to see these numbers. You're going to see your loan amount. Let me see if I can be fancy here. It will show you your loan amount. It will show you, now this is a sample. 3.875 does not exist right now, and it will show you your monthly principal and interest. However, to get the entire payment, you'll look right here, right? This is your mortgage payment. This is your taxes and insurance. This is your total payment. Kind of confusing, but that's how it is. Up top, it's going to tell you conventional, what loan program you have and whether or not your rate is locked. I can make promises all day long while that rate is unlocked. Rates changed every day. Someone mentioned in the chat earlier they're bipolar. They definitely have been that way over the last year or two. So a rate lock is really important. None of this is going to happen until you find a house, but I want you to understand what you're looking at. The other thing is that it's going to give you your estimated cash to close. Now, it is not these two numbers added together. This is the total number. Estimated cash to close in this scenario would be what this person had to bring to closing. This is just them separating out closing costs. I don't know why they do that, but you just want to pay attention to that bottom number. Now, if you're shopping lenders, right, you want to pick different lenders. You want to know which lender is the best. You've got to pay attention to box A charges. These are lender fees. Every other charge on this loan estimate is going to be the same no matter what lender you use. Now, they may have different fees, but as long as you use the same title company, the same insurance agent, all that, which you have the right to do, those fees will remain the same. The only fees that the lender has control over are these right here in the origination charges. So really, really important to pay attention to that, especially if you're shopping lenders. The thing is, I can charge you more fees here and make your interest rate lower. I can charge you less fees here and make your interest rate higher. So just because someone says they're offering a better rate, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're the better deal. That's why you have to understand how these documents work. I have a live video that we did on the Bayou Mortgage YouTube channel where we fully broke this down. That wasn't my goal tonight, but I did want to put it on here because I feel like it's really important that you guys understand how to look at this document. It's really, really key. Then you have some ongoing costs, right? You've got You've got taxes and insurance changes, right? Of your mortgage payment, the only thing that can change is taxes and insurance because those are annual costs. So if the price or the cost of insurance goes up that year, then your insurance will go up. If the taxes go up, which they rarely do, although maybe slightly, then your tax bill would go up, which would then affect your payment. I would just say, especially in this market, like shopping your insurance every year is really, really important. Gone are the days, at least for now, where you can be like super loyal to an insurance company, for 10 years and still get the best deal. So you also want to think about routine maintenance. You want to think about, all the stuff that goes into maintaining your home, whether that's lawn care, landscaping, um, you know, uh, all that stuff, maintaining air conditioners, just different things like that. And you also want to consider if you're buying in an HOA or not. Louisiana doesn't have a ton of properties in HOA, but if you buy in some of these newer or nicer neighborhoods, um, then especially newer, then you're very likely to have an HOA. So you just want to know that because there is a cost for that, and then they tell you what to do with all your stuff. So, all right, we're getting there, guys. We're moving right along. Mistake number 4: not understanding your credit score. Not understanding your credit score. So, here's the deal. I think we've already proven that you don't need perfect credit to buy a house. You don't need it. You can get a home if you have, like we said, a 580 credit score or higher. Now, if you're a veteran, we can help with a score as low as 500 or higher. But here's the most important point: credit history matters too. Okay. So, not all low credit scores are created the same. You might have a low credit score because you've got a collection, a medical collection, which they're going to get wiped out in the next 60 days. They're not going to be allowed to put those on credit reports anymore. Or you might have a low credit score because you have 10 accounts that haven't been paid on time. They're very different in the eyes of the lender. If you have multiple late payments in the last year, chances are probably not going to qualify for a loan this year. You're going to have to build some positive payment history, get those things caught up. If late payments aren't an issue, then we can be very, very flexible when it comes to credit. The other thing that I need you guys to know is that Credit Karma is just a guide. No lender uses that score. So if you're like, oh, my Credit Karma says I'm this, I'm just letting you know we don't use that score. If you don't want to go through the pre-approval process and you really want to know what your mortgage FICO scores are, the only way outside of having a lender do it is to use myfico.com to check your actual credit scores. And like I said, you could get pre-approved and the lender will do it. If you've had bankruptcies, foreclosures, short sales, repos, defaults, you've got to discuss that up front because those things have waiting periods and can create issues. Repos don't have waiting periods, but they still create issues because they're usually for cars and it's a significant amount. So it's something that we have to discuss. Someone was asking about student loans, so I think this will probably answer that question. Yes, student loans can affect your ability to buy a house. Whether they're obviously if they're past due, then you've got to get them out of collections before you can actually buy a home. If you just have them in deferment, then we have to count them into your debt to income, which, like I said before, we use half of 1% as a monthly payment. But student loans do play a role. They've gotten a lot more lenient on them, though. It used to be a lot more difficult 4 or 5 years ago. They're definitely more lenient in terms of how much we have to count and all these different things and ways that we can get around it with different types of deferments. I think we already talked about credit building tips, so I'm gonna skip that one. That way we can get to the Q&A by 8. So mistake number 5 is not knowing how much you need to put down. Down payments, you don't need 20% down. You have options from 0 to 5%. Larger down payments also always don't make a big difference. People ask me all the time, well, if I put 20,000 down instead of 10, or if I put 5,000 down or 10,000 down instead of 5, whatever it is, right? Will it make that big of a difference on my monthly payment? And the answer is no. I mean, you're talking about $30, $40 a month max. So usually people will opt to keep as much cash as they can in their accounts, especially in a time like this where we have inflation and all these different things going on, versus spending all that money at once. If you're going to spend the money, typically a better strategy is to actually buy your interest rate down if your goal is to get a lower payment. The other thing I need you guys to know, cash ain't king when it comes to getting a mortgage. All right. So I'm going to need y'all to take all of that money you got stuffed under your pillow and under your bed and get it in an account. funds have to be in some type of a checking or a bank account because they have to be, or it could be a CD or an investment account, but it's got to be in some type of an account with a paper trail that can prove where it came from. Once it's been seasoned for 60 days, because we only go back 60 days, you don't have to prove where the funds came from. But any large deposits, 500, 1,000 or more into an account, the underwriter will say, where did that money come from? And if we can't paper trail it in the way that is required, which is pretty hard, then they will not allow those funds to be used. And you can thank money laundering and all that stuff for those rules. So that's down payments. You want to know how much down payment you need. Obviously, you can't really figure that out on your own. You kind of have to do some math. Number 6, we got one more, and then we're jumping into Q&A. Mistake number 6, not knowing income issues. Now, this is by far the most important and the one that causes the most problems for you. Okay. You're like, oh, I make $2,000 a month. You put that on your mortgage application, or, $4,000 a month, 5,000, whatever it is. Right. But you don't understand, nor should you, because it's not your job, how an underwriter calculates income. So when going into the mortgage process, you need to understand what they're looking for. You need to have consistent, stable, documentable income. Now, this is presuming, FHA, conventional, USDA, investment programs, totally different ballgame. You need to have consistent, stable, documentable income. Here's what that means. That means that you can prove it, like a pay stub or a W-2 or tax returns if you're self-employed. It needs to be consistent, meaning that you didn't make 50,000 last year and only 20,000 this year. That's not good. If you're self-employed or commission only, it requires 2 years of tax returns unless you do some kind of a non-QM program with a large down payment. That's not really the scope of this class. They're out there, but typically you need 2 years of taxes, and you can't show a loss, right? They're going to use your net income, not your gross income if you're self-employed, in order to qualify you for that loan. Your debt to income ratio, and again, we have a whole video on the Bayou Mortgage YouTube channel where I break this down, determines how much you can afford. Here it is in a nutshell. You make $5,000 a month. You have $500 a month in debt payments. You want to buy a house that costs you $1,500 a month. So that's 2,000 divided into 5,000, right? That gives you a debt to income ratio of 40%. You're good. Most loan programs cap at 50 or slightly over 50. So you need to make sure that your debt is in line with your income, or that's going to create qualification issues for you. With that being said, there is no minimum income to buy a home. However, understanding debt to income ratio, knowing that I can only use half of my gross income and I still have to deduct all of my debts from that. If you are on, if you're making like $2,000 a month, it's going to be really hard to qualify for a home, obviously, unless you have no debt. But even then, like, there's only going to be specific areas where you're going to be able to find a property that's $70,000, $80,000 that will allow you to be able to afford that. So while there is no minimum income, you just need to be aware of the rules, because, if you're making less than $2,000 a month, it's already hard. It's going to be, I won't say impossible. It's going to be very difficult. You would probably want to look at some of these government-sponsored programs like the direct loan with USDA, which you actually have to go directly to USDA and use. So that's income. And I know I'm moving quick, but just want to also, that's good. The mistake number 7 gets into that. The biggest mistake is trying to do this alone, right? How many people have been researching for a year or more? I'm curious in the chat. You've been researching on your own for a year or more and you're still unsure. The biggest mistake that first-time home buyers make is they they're researching, they're talking, they're doing all this stuff, but here's the problem, right? And Felicia, I bet that you have experienced this. There is so much information out there, and sometimes it seems like it's conflicting, and you don't really know what's true and what's not true, right? Trying to do it alone means that you will make this process take longer. The solution to not making any of these mistakes is to get pre-approved. Once you're pre-approved, then you can do all the other stuff. You can shop for homes. You can shop for different lenders if you don't like the rate that you were given or the terms or whatever. But getting a professional and getting a team together and saying, yeah, we're going to partner with you and help you figure this thing out will literally alleviate all the stress. Now, the answer might be you don't qualify now, but if you're working with a good lender like we are, they will give you an action plan that tells you exactly what you need to do to get ready. And if you do qualify, congrats. Like, you get to go shop for a house. That's so cool. So don't make the biggest mistake, which is watch this class and then decide to do it all alone. And so I appreciate that. Felicia says she got better clarification tonight. And that was my goal. That was definitely my goal. Um, so those are the 7 mistakes. Those are the 7 mistakes. I'm seeing the questions. I'm holding because we're going to jump into Q&A in just a second. So definitely be thinking of any questions you have, but don't do it alone. The 3 keys to a mortgage approval, which is basically me just restating everything I just covered. We look at your credit, we look at your income, and we look at your assets. Income's the most important, followed by credit and then assets. And then we piece together what you qualify based on those 3 things. Want to give you tips for a smooth loan approval before we jump into the end? Call us if you have any questions. Continue living at your current residence. Continue paying your mortgage or rent on time. Continue to use your credit card as normal. Don't max it out and cause your score to get lower. Keep working at your current employer. Keep your same insurance company. Stay current on all existing accounts. Expect requests for additional documentation through the process. Don't make any large purchases. Don't change bank accounts or make large cash deposits. Transfer balances. Close any credit card accounts. Consolidate your debt onto debt consolidation. Apply for new credit or take out new loans. Definitely, probably just don't co-sign ever. I bet there's people that could give me a amen in the chat that it usually never works out well. But definitely don't do it in the mortgage process. And then you want to not max out or overcharge your card accounts. So that is tips for a smooth pre-approval. That is how we avoid the final mistake in doing it all alone. Question for you guys, and this is where I'd like to see some engagement. Do you feel like your time on this class tonight has been well spent? Let me know in the chat. All right. Responses are coming in. Yes, 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 yes. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, good. Good. Keep them coming. I love it. I love it. So, do you feel confident in being able to purchase a home yet? Some of you, maybe yes. Some of you, not sure. All right, we got some yeses. We got some more yeses. Perfect. More so, Christy says. Yep, that's normal. So I don't know what you knew about home buying process coming into the webinar today, but I bet it's a safe bet that what we covered today was new and valuable to you, which most of you said, right? Jessica said, I got some things I know now that I need to work on. Would you like to spend more time with my team where we can personally be invested in your home buying success? So I would like to make that available. I would like to open up. I've actually opened up my calendar already. You'll see when you go. I typically let my team take appointments, but I've actually opened up my personal calendar to offer you guys a free home buying consultation to help you reach your goal. All you have to do, this could sound like a commercial for a second, just bear with me. You just go to workwithchanning.com and you can actually schedule that call. And I'd love for you guys to do that. I'm actually going to drop it in the chat too to make it easier for y'all to just click so you can go right there. I would love to have one-on-one conversations with each of you. Now, workwithchanning.com. That's all you got to do. It'll take you right to my calendar. Let's talk about top reasons people avoid the call. So you're hearing me say, come jump on a call with me after listening to this information. So number 1, people don't feel ready, right? You may not feel ready, so you don't want to jump on the call. I would just say that there's only one way to get ready, and that's to get the information that you need so that you know exactly what you need to do. Number 2, they're working with someone else. Some of you saw the ad. You're already working with the realtor and a lender. Well, I think you could tell by my presentation that shopping around is smart. And maybe you like the fact that we're willing to educate you. Even if you're working with someone else, I'd still like to talk to you. Number 3, they need to work on their credit. That's a lot of people, right? We can help you with that. And how far we take it is up to you. We have options where we can help and assist you with at least telling you what you need to do. Now, it's on you to do it, but we can help you with that. And we are fine to give you our time to help you do that. And then number four, they don't want to be pressured into buying anything. So let me tell you what the call is not. It doesn't go like this. Hey, Felicia, I'm going to use you as an example since you were so awesome tonight. This is Shannon with Bayou Mortgage. Thanks for taking this call. Let me go ahead and send you this online application so you can let me pull your credit and then we can have a conversation. That's not what the call is about. I'm going to spend 15, 20, 30 minutes. Some of y'all like to talk. Just hearing what you're trying to accomplish, learning more about your personal income, credit, all those different things just from you. And then I'm going to give you an action plan on what to do. Some of you, maybe a lot of you, it will be to do the application and get pre-approved. Others of you, we may just get a credit report and start working on some credit. But it is not a high pressure, got to buy a house tomorrow type of thing. I want to offer my time and work one-on-one with you. So workwithchanning.com is where you can go. If anybody has done that, can you guys confirm that you're not having any issues accessing the calendar or anything? Oh, Daniel, awesome. Thank you. Thank you for scheduling. So good. The calendar is rolling. These usually do go by pretty quick. We had like 200 people registered for this thing, but it looked like only about 30 or 40 showed up tonight. So they may not get as super packed as it normally does, but the calendar usually does get pretty quick. Workwithchanning.com. It should look something like that, and you can pick your time slot that works best for you. If we run out of slots, let me know, and I can reach out to you individually. Okay, workwithchanning.com. I'll say it one more time. I'd love to talk to you and help you out. Time for Q&A. Let me scroll back up, and we're going to spend the next however long, maybe 30 minutes or less, going through some Q&A, depending on how many questions you guys have. But I'm going to go back up to some of these questions that were asked while I was going through the material, and you guys go ahead and drop whatever you have now in the chat. Okay, so do you think it's best to buy a home with zero down? I think we should put something down at least if we can. So here's the deal, is that there's very little difference between 3% down and 0% down. I think the biggest factor in that is that if like, hey, there's a good possibility I'm going to have to move in a year, 2 years, 3 years, then yeah, maybe you shouldn't. But the flip side of that is that homes do typically appreciate year over year. Now, what I would avoid is I would not buy a house with zero down in a new construction neighborhood where they're still building, right? Because then that's a recipe for disaster. You go to sell in a couple of years, they're still building. Why would I buy your used house when I can own the same house but brand new? But generally speaking, zero down's not a problem if you intend to stay for a little while. The only place where it really gets sticky is when you go to sell. There's not a lot of equity, and so it may be difficult to hire a realtor and pay their 5-6% commission to sell that house if you don't wait a while. But there's so many other options. I mean, there's like, if you really get in a pickle, you can rent it out. There's a lot of different things you can do that people don't often think about. Is that closing cost number with down payment included, or is down payment also included? Hey, Daniel, that was just an example. Every number is different, but the number at the bottom of the LE represented down payment and closing costs. So it's both. Someone asked, what about Experian? Maybe I missed that. We pull all three. So we pull Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian, and we use the middle score. So let's say you have a 640, a 655, and a 650. We would use the 650 regardless of which company that came from. I'm getting blown up with appointments. I love it, guys. I love it. I'm looking forward to meeting with all of you. Yeah, it can definitely be overwhelming, guys. I'd love to help with that, and hopefully this class has. Let's see. How long do you have to be working at your new job before buying your first home? That depends. So there is no 2-year work history requirement in the way that most people think of it. You need to have 2 years of work history, but they don't have to be at the same job. So it's a lot better if they're in the same line of work and if you're not commissioned. If you're commissioned, then you're kind of in a pickle. But if you're not commissioned, you make hourly pay, your salary, that kind of thing. You're not a truck driver who's getting paid by the load. Then you can buy a house and have recently started a new job. You typically, to answer your question directly, need to have at least 30 days of pay stubs. So if you're biweekly, that's 3. If you're weekly, that's 5. Most people aren't monthly, but if you're monthly, that's 2. because most pay periods are like a couple of days short of 30 days. So that's something that we can talk about in a call too, and kind of help you get a plan together. B asked, how do you properly use a credit card so it won't affect your score? Don't keep a balance on it. And if you do, make it less than 10% of your available credit. Once you get over 40, your credit score starts to negatively get affected. 50, 60, 70%, you start to lose points. I've literally seen people raise their credit score 100 points just by paying down their credit cards. It is a major factor in your credit score calculation. Hopefully that answers that. Here we go. All right. So Daniel says, would getting a new credit card affect loans for a house? I mean, it could, Daniel. For one, if you haven't had your credit pulled yet, it could drop your score, which would make it harder to qualify. And if your debt to income is tight, now typically credit cards only have a payment of like 35, 25 bucks a month, but theoretically it could mess up with your debt to income and reduce what you qualify for. Let's see. This will be my second home. I just have a few things to actually get ready. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that. What types of things are lenders looking for when reviewing your bank account? Large deposits and recurring transactions that aren't listed on your credit report. So if you're frequently getting cash deposits, those would have to be sourced. Even like Venmo transfers and stuff like that. Yep, we would have to source those from Venmo or Cash App or whatever. And then recurring. So like let's say that you have a car, but you bought it at one of these buy here, pay here car lots. So it's not on your credit report, but you can clearly see that every month you're paying $350 to Jimmy's A auto sales, right? They're gonna be able to see that and know that that's a recurring obligation that we're gonna have to count in your debt to income. So it's large deposits and recurring transactions. Now they're not looking at like, although I've had some underwriters do this, man, like you're spending 20 bucks at the smoke shop every day or something like that. But it's mainly looking for those bills that may not be accounted for on your credit report, child support payments, alimony, that type of stuff. Let's see. Are lower interest rates typically on new homes versus pre-owned homes? They're no different. So the interest rate is the interest rate, regardless of what home you buy. Your interest rate is purely driven by your credit score, the loan program that you're using, and how much you're putting down. There are other factors, but those are the three main ones. The thing with new homes is that what builders are advertising right now is they're giving you a lower interest rate. They're paying for it. They're giving you a lower interest rate for the first year or two, but then your payment spikes up after that if you don't refinance. So in my opinion, they can be okay to do that. You just, as long as you know that going in and you don't get shocked when your payment doubles in 2 years. Hopefully that answered the question. If not, definitely let me know. Do you know about ownup.com when trying to find a lender? Also, how good is USDA loan? Should it be the first choice if you only make $2,500 a month? So I don't know about ownup.com. You could tell me more about that. I haven't heard of that. At 2,500 a month, you're going to want to go with the program that you can qualify for. You may, with USDA, their max debt to income ratio is 43 to 45%, depending on your credit score. So it may not be the best fit in terms of debt to income. You may have to go FHA, which is we can go up to 55%. So it would help you squeeze out a few extra $100 a month to be able to qualify for, just in terms of debt to income ratio. So again, that's one of those things. It's like on a case by case basis. It really just depends. So, all right, I've caught up to the chat. Who else has got some questions for me tonight? I'll give y'all a second. And I appreciate all the questions. Something I didn't cover, something you've been curious about. You may have already touched on this, but in regard to the credit card, should you close them out or maybe keep the balance pretty low and make payments? Yeah, I wouldn't recommend closing them, Christy, because they could actually negatively impact your score, especially if they're some of your older accounts. it is better to just pay them down and not maintain a balance, but maybe on one of them you keep a $10 balance or something like that. Um, but don't carry a balance on the rest of them. And then obviously, if you have a balance on them, you want to go ahead and do what you can to pay that down, assuming your scores are not, where you want them to be to qualify. If your scores are fine, then, what you do with your credit cards is your business. But if you're trying to get the most out of your scores, that's the strategy that I would use. Oh, the Experian app. Thank you. No, that's not a valid mortgage score. So the only place to get your mortgage FICO scores is myfico.com. So Experian and Discover and all the ones from the credit cards, they give you a FICO score, some of them, but it is not a mortgage FICO. It's usually a credit card FICO, and the scores are actually very different. So that would be the only place to get it. Anybody else? Trying to think if there's some common ones that I've didn't answer. I've covered a bunch today. Um, what should you do? Oh, here we go. We got one. So, does my credit card report immediately when no, no, your credit reports monthly on your statement date, usually a few days after your statement date. So, whatever your due date is, a few days after that is when your card is going to report back to the credit bureaus. So, whatever changes you make will happen within that time frame once per month. For VA, what is the lowest income do you need to qualify? So there's not an income requirement per se on VA. And VA actually doesn't have a debt to income ratio cap either, though most lenders put one, like 60%. But you have to pass the VA residual, which is like a spreadsheet that we fill out for you. So here's a good one because it looks like we had two veterans on here, which really, really excites me because I love working with veterans. So for a VA loan, we pull your certificate of eligibility. Usually we can do this online. Occasionally we need a copy of your DD 214. Once we have that and it tells us that you're good, we can then begin the process like any other normal loan. But they don't have a minimum income. And if you get any type of VA disability or even regular disability or Social Security, we can actually gross that up as well to try to help. The main thing is that you need to be able to pass the residual income calculation, which is, it's fairly complicated and it goes on a house by house basis, but we can help you with that and give you a good idea of if you're going to qualify or not. Thank you for the question, Sharon. Child support doesn't, I mean, I guess in a way it can hurt your chances of buying a house because we have to count it in your debt to income ratio. So we get your child support order, and then we calculate that. Now, there may be occasionally some workarounds to that. Like if you have a child that's 15, which means they'll age out in the next 3 years, then sometimes we don't have to include it. But yeah, it does go into your DTI, so it definitely will limit the amount that you can qualify for, and whether or not, you know, how bad that affects you kind of depends on your income and your debt. Back pay is a different story. If you're on a payment plan, then we can use that. We just got to get the documentation for that. If you haven't started any kind of payment plan, you'll have to get on a payment plan and get all of that cleaned up in order to proceed for a loan. No, my husband has no credit. How does that affect us? Well, Louisiana is a community property state, so we typically have to pull credit for both borrowers, but we don't necessarily have to use both borrowers on the loan. If you have good enough credit and income on your own to qualify, then we could do that. Or if not, and we need to use his income or whatever, then we would just work on helping you get his credit going, so that you could both be on there. Unless you do conventional, and then conventional, like if you have really high credit and all that, conventional doesn't require us to do that, but FHA, USDA, VA would. Sorry, my voice is getting a little. This dang weather. I didn't vote for the cold weather, by the way. Some of y'all might like cold weather. I do not. But what are HUD homes? Is that a good deal? Someone mentioned that to me. I mean, they can be a good deal. They're basically foreclosures that are owned by HUD. And so there are special programs out there, $100 down, different things like that. If they qualify, not all of them qualify. I will tell you that the most difficult thing about buying any foreclosure, but especially a HUD foreclosure, is that they will not fix anything. So if you get an appraisal on the home or you just want something fixed or it's required to be fixed, they're not going to fix it. And so you would have to get a renovation loan in order to fix whatever's wrong with the house, which obviously comes with a higher interest rate, more difficult to qualify for, all that stuff. We do them, but that's just the gist of it. So it really depends. And we had a run of bad luck with some foreclosed homes over the last couple of months, just taking a really long time and running into these problems. That's the biggest setback. That's the biggest setback for sure. Other than that, it's all pretty normal. Do you assist with getting homes in another state? No, right now just licensed in Louisiana. We had Florida. I've not renewed with Florida yet. Plan to get Mississippi soon, but right now we're just Louisiana. But thank you for asking. And if you need a referral for whatever state you're in, Miss Kim, I'm happy to do that. I have broker friends all over the country. All right, guys, any more questions? Slowing down a little bit. I need the Jeopardy music. Doo, 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 doo. Awesome. Well, I'm gonna hang out for like 5 more minutes to see if anybody else has a question. The rest of you, if you don't have a question, um, you're free to go. You are free to go, whether or not I said that, but just want to let you know that if you don't have a question, you're free to go. This has been recorded as well, so if you're interested in the recording, you can just let me know. We'll be sending out some text messages to you guys later on. So, Sharon says, so purchasing foreclosed home is not a good idea. It can be. It can be a not a great idea because a lot of times what's happening is, people are buying those homes as first time home buyers and they don't have the cash to fix them. And it's just the whole repair issue. It really comes down to a case by case basis, but 9 times out of 10, most of those homes need something. And so it just makes it a little bit more difficult for sure. Thank you guys. Thanks everyone for being grateful to be here tonight. I'm grateful that y'all were here. Again, I'm here at least 5 more minutes if questions come in. More if somebody has something that they haven't asked at this point. But really, really grateful for everyone. Want to remind you guys one more time, workwithchanning.com. You can hop on, jump on a free call with me, and we can discuss any other questions that maybe you didn't want to ask or didn't think about asking, as well as help you get that home buying plan together. Workwithchanning.com. Putting it in the chat one more time, and then I'm going to stop sharing here. All right. Okay, guys. Well, I'm not seeing anything else come through. So have a good night. Stay warm. And I look forward to talking to all of y'all that booked a call with me. Really, really grateful that y'all stuck it out all the way to the end. And just thankful. And I will talk to you guys soon. Thank you.